So hello, my name's Steve Nabel, and today I'm speaking with Andy of Plantally, I hope I got that right, on the language of nature. And Andy works with individuals and groups, connecting them to the innate healing spirit within nature. And Andy on his website says that nature speaks a language that goes back to the beginning of time, a language formed from the world within which we live, reflected by the elements, the seasons, the directions, and the senses. So hi, Andy.
Hey, Steve, good to see you.
So you're in sunny Portugal, which looks pretty nice over there. So let me ask you about that statement, first of all, because it's a very beautiful statement, isn't it? That nature speaks a language that goes back to the beginning of time. Can you say something about this language? Because obviously you're connecting to this language within nature. What kind of language is that?
The first thing I'd say is I think one of the beauties of life is where we find our love and passion, and we let that be the kind of learning and teaching for us. We get into the same spaces. I believe all roads lead to Rome,
Yeah.
And for me, my heart's always been in nature. As a child, it was a thing that nourished me, that grounded me. And so it's kind of instinctively, that's where I've moved with my spiritual journey. So for me, it pulls down to the elements and how the elements are, I don't know, playing within our world here, playing together, how they're playing within us as individuals, within objects, spirits, beings in nature, within Mother Earth, within the air, and kind of learning to sensitize to those different elements and to feel into all the characteristics that sit within them, where they blend and where they separate, I guess.
That's beautiful, yeah. Well, I think that when you said playing, it really struck me, because when I feel nature, I do feel this playful, I mean, it's not the only energy there, but there is certainly a sense of play there. Going into a beautiful wood or a beautiful place in nature takes me back to childhood, or even a beautiful rose garden. I'm finding recently I'm really being drawn back into nature. I've been so much into the kind of angels and, all of this kind of high spiritual work, but really connecting with the rocks and the earth and the elements seems really important to me. Can I ask you, learning to sensitize, is this something that you've always had, or is it something because learning to means you had to kind of train yourself, or was it always there somewhere?
It's probably unlearning, isn't it? It's, as with everything in life, it's unlearning the noise, the distraction, the intensity, and moving into another space where I'd call it heart space, to be honest, where you're vulnerable and you're sensitive, and where you've learned what is you and what is not you. And then when things are moving, you understand, what's, fine tuning to that, I guess. And and then within that learning, I mean, I've not really had too many in the way of physical teachers, so it's kind of been nature and aspects of nature themselves teaching me and bringing me into this world. And that gives an interesting place of perspective, because on one level, it doesn't conform with many things. On some levels, it doesn't conform with indigenous beliefs, wisdom, ceremony. And in some ways, so I'm sitting in an area, a little pocket niche that's in a way, quite unfamiliar. And maybe it's not, but from my place, that's the way it's been. So not many people kind of get it. I think if I draw back to this learning sense, the first thing is I was always quite sensitive, I guess, unbeknownst, for some passages of life, and naturally had my ways of repelling against this sensitivity and trying to, fit in. But that sensitivity, which stems from eating something and know exactly what it's doing. Is it working for me? Is it working against me? Is it moving me up? Is it moving me down? Is it moving me left? Or is it moving me right? Or is it centering me? And so those people with food sensitivities, who feel disabled by modern day life, where they're out, checking for ingredients in restaurants and things, I might turn that around and go, perhaps that's working for you. You know, perhaps that's implicit of this, this deep sensitivity. And food itself is, for me, symbolic of earth. It's like Mother Earth who feeds us, and the stomach. And that's a good sensitivity to have, I think. So I was, you know, plagued with that for a passage in my life, going, oh, good grief. So not only am I kind of, you know, a little bit different in general, and try to sort of mask that in general society, you know, but also I'm like, oh, I can't eat that, and I can eat this. And so that's one, you know, one little signal. The other little signals, you know, when you're at a party, when you walk into a party, how you feel, whether you're a person that likes to be more of a hermit, which I guess kind of instinctively I would be. So why is it that you don't like, you know, what is it about this group atmosphere and all these energies coming around, and okay, trying to ground them, seeing where there's perhaps, you know, levels of toxicity in the room, and you know, within most spiritual people, there tends to be, at least for a big passage of their journey, an intense sensitivity, you know, which at times they might wish they didn't have, but really is a beautiful blessing. I think it's the real authenticity of the world that we're in, being able to. So that, in a nutshell, that's more or less it. You know, sensitive base, and then this identification of what's me and what's not with me, which is you know, itself a real journey to arrive at. And then finally, I would say, you know, as a sort of male incarnate here, women have a slightly easier job with this, I think, generalization, but you know, this passage from moving to mind to heart as well. And you know, the magic sits in the heart with this. So it's drop into heart space, pull out from heart space, and then you're in it. So a big aspect of learning was that. How do you make that passage, that journey? How do you silence what's going on here? And how do you learn to trust and further engage with what's here? And you know, wow, life tends to be up against that. You know, as a kid, a clever kid that went to a private, you know, top private school as well, I was the most distanced from this place, you know, almost possible. So it's like, okay, all right. And life's done its thing to move me there, which has been brutal and beautiful, I guess.
Well, can I ask you a bit about the unlearning of the noise, leaving the noise behind? Because I'm sure you've probably, like me, gone through some regular life work and life thing. Can you just say something about that passage and out of that passage?
Oh, good grief. Yeah.
Is it that painful?
No, no. Where to start? You know, ultimately, there was a sense of knowing what I would see wasn't quite what was going on, and that calling was very, very strong in me. And so it's like, okay, what do we do with this? And it started off, I started growing and working with psilocybin mushrooms, and I was like, okay, all right.
Right.
And I instinctively knew how to work with them, you know, how to access truth and how to move past distraction. So that itself was a core learning. And then, you know, because mushrooms, from their energetic for me, they very much move between earth and kind of air spirit. So it's an easy transition to move out of physical body, ego, mind into another space where you're like, whoa, this is beautiful. And so I was taught a lot, an awful lot. And but it was hardcore on my body. The toxicity of the mushrooms was pretty hard. So it was careful, you know, careful where you dip in. And then at a certain point, I had kind of gone the distance with that. And I guess that's where the more brutal work started, because I started working with ayahuasca then, and I was I went to the Amazon. I was far from the kind of ayahuasca tourism. I was in the heart of the jungle, very much in the deep end, working with plant spirits. And this was my first insight into that, you know, dieting plants with intention, you know, and in a concoction that was revealed to the curanderos, the healers there. It's like, okay, take the bark from this at 5 o'clock in the morning and mix it with this, da, 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 da. And so I'd be drinking this, and I was working with a very, very poisonous plant, and that has very specific instructions. And good grief, to that did a lot for me. And at the same time, you know, it was, I was still of Western mind in that place. So I still had a lot to work through. I was totally in the deep end, you know. I was like, what's going on here? Okay, how do I ground here? How do I, so it was kind of within the most extreme storms that I learned to kind of, you know, center, ground, and the two magical words, trust and surrender, because that's it, you know. It's like, this isn't in control, something else is in control, and it's serving me, not working against me. So when you can kind of come to terms with that every single thing that's moving, happening in life is, it's got you, you know, it's got your back, but we don't realize it because we're caught between the polarities of good and bad and want and don't want and all of this stuff. So unlearning was, you know, slapping around the face until I got it. And then when I got it, and that's when all the goodness opened up. But that was a hardcore sort of initiation, I guess, into all of this.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, I'd love the mushrooms, and I've done a couple of ayahuasca, which I understand is brutal. Yeah, I feel the brutalness of it. Yeah, really. I remember when the spirit was taking, you know, is this taking over? Yeah. And I spoke to the spirit. It kind of appeared in like this jaguar form. I spoke to the spirit and said, I don't really know if I like you taking over my body and mind. And it was very kind of tongue-in-cheek answer. It just said, don't worry, I'll give it back to you in much better condition. And I just thought, you know what, I can't stop you anyway. It just took me over. And mushrooms, I remember feeling, I had my own intention with mushrooms, but as soon as I met that energy, it goes, well, that's all gone. They're going to take me where they want to go. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. So is there any point having any intention with mushrooms? I don't know really, because they just had this playful, we're going to take you here kind of energy. So I've experienced a few of your transmissions, Andy. I mean, one recently, which gave me this kind of healing in the chest, a clearing of the chest. But I know when we spoke afterwards, there was, you said, well, the throat was clearing, and of course that cleared down to chest. So can I ask you about your work, including your transmission work? You know, what kind of work are you doing with people?
So more or less, I'm taking people that have certain sensitivities, a certain calling to, you know, move a bit deeper into this work. People that have worked with plant medicine before, but, you know, it became end of the road there, or it was totally hardcore and they wanted out. Or nature people who were just like, man, that's my home, that's my heart in nature. And so, you know, slowly these people start coming, and it's, you know, we touched on it before. It's truly the organic nature of this, and nature can be bam, quick, let's go, forest fires, but nature tends to be, all right, let's get established in the soil, and then let's work out our water. Okay, we good, right? Let's start gradually growing now, and, you know, look at bamboo for this, and it's kind of incredible how it works. So when it started flowing, you know, more and more people started talking with more and more people, and slowly it comes together in sort of groups. And, you know, I have a way that, so the first thing is how do I know what to work with?
Yeah.
That's really cool, because you've got two things going on, sometimes in synchronicity and sometimes one or the other. But nature just comes quite often, and something from nature is just like, ta-da! I'm like, okay, all right, let's do this. And that ta-da is totally beautiful. It's totally a little bit bonkers, actually, but it's in physical world. It's not deniable. If there's someone with me, they can also, you've got this physical nature kind of appearing, like, here I am, let's dance. and then you've got the more spiritually led part, which is, appearing in mind's eye and calling through this way and imparting knowledge, I guess. And either way, that's when I start working with it. And maybe I imagine in some ways it's, it's similar for you, but it's like, okay, what is this? And it's, I don't want to say learning to master something, but you know what I mean. It's like picking up a bike and like, how does this work? So it's like, who are you? Okay. What is this? All right. What's going on in my body? What's going on physically? What's going on mentally? And what are you doing spiritually within energetics? What are you moving, changing, healing, altering within me that you have mastered in this natural world around us? And that's really cool, because if you look at nature and if you look at humans and you look at where we fall short, and then you look at where in nature they're like masters in that terrain, my experience has been we can sort of borrow from that pool, that knowledge, species knowledge, that that incredible intelligence. And so in the sessions, what can be difficult for some people is I don't tell them what we're working with, and it's totally trust driven, which is, if that isn't there, then there's not much point kind of delving anyway. So they trust that we're going to be working with something they don't have a clue what it's going to do. And I mean, it's changing a little bit how I do it, but I would quite often sort of polarize stuff. So we'd work with two things, and if we were going to go up, we were also going to go down with the next thing. And you learn where people are comfortable, where people are, the angelic lights like tends to be super easy. It's like if we've mastered it, the death process of like, oh God, really back home. But the going down into the dark waters, nobody likes it. And so there's a little bit of nervousness. It's changed a bit, but there's a little bit of like, shit, where are we going? Where are we going with this? Am I going down into the depths of my wounds, or am I going into sort of cosmic space? And so we'd do a session and everyone listens to a playlist. I work totally remotely in a way that's quite in line with what I experienced in the Amazon, to be honest. It's very Amazonian. That's where this, let's call it a gift, opened up. But I connect in people, I sit and I hold space with everything moving through me as well. So I'll sometimes move into what other people are seeing. Sometimes I'll just be in my own, very elemental, nature-based space. And quite often I'm clearing stuff for people. And this is something I experienced in the Amazon as well, how, the me to we, how we can really benevolently assist in beautiful ways. And if we've cleaned our vessel, how we can, remove stuff from others through that vessel. So it's hard work at the same time. It kind of has an impact on me. So I'm sat there doing my thing. The other person is lying down listening to music with many different things going on, depending on the way that they perceive this world. So most people love the visuals, the kind of third eye opening and moving through these landscapes. And those people, in the group format, because after everyone shares what's gone on, the people that haven't got the visuals feel alienated and feel dissatisfied, which goes to show that where we are in humanity at the moment, everyone wants the kind of the lights and the cinema screens. And I try and remind everyone that is not the sole source of magic. The sole source of magic here is knowing, is just knowing. You don't need to see, you just know, And as you evolve to that point, all of this theater and drama can fall away a little bit, and you can just be in this other space. And for some people it's immensely physically healing, and limbs are shooting up in the airs, and there's stuff clearing and sharp pains disappearing and all of this. And for others, they're just totally in another space, meeting, moving with nature and beings. And then you know, the great point and why I much prefer group work is afterwards, everyone shares their journey and people start to realize, good grief, I haven't just made that up. And they're realizing they're saying the same thing, they're saying the same thing, they're saying the same thing. So it's learning again, this mind heart and this voice in head and voice from higher aspect, let's call it.
Yeah.
And going, that's you speaking this time, right? Rather than that's you with your endless kind of chatter. And that's a real fine tuning, you know, it's like, okay, all right. And knowing when to move forward because that's what you're meant to move forward with. And knowing when you're moving forward with something that's come from another space, which is this like, oh, I want this, I want that, and, you know, scarcity driven or whatever. So people really learn, number one, I'm not a weirdo. I'm in this world and I'm receiving incredible stuff from it. And two, that's the voice. That's kind of what I'd say. We work with plants. It was only plants at the beginning. And then I was like, you know, and they were like, yeah. So brought in animals and then brought in, you know, minerals and, you know, like yourself, can work with the other aspects. You know, it's not something I tend to declare, but the gods and goddesses play a huge role in this. So, which brings me to the point that everything in nature is also connected out, you know, portals, if you will, or connection points to higher aspects. So I've, you know, learned a lot about mythology solely from plants teaching me it without any prior knowledge. And I've learned much about gods and goddesses without having a clue about gods and goddesses and lineages and, you know, and knowing who's calling me and knowing who's helping me. And that's where it gets a bit wild and wonderful. And, you know, you could attribute it to archetypes and higher aspect archetypes and, you know, fine. But I see them and their kind of benevolence a little bit, you know, so that's in this as well.
Fantastic. So I just want to let people know they can find you through your website, which is plantally.com, Plantally, and I'll put a link with this podcast. And it's really been amazing speaking with you.
Yeah.
And hope to catch up with you sometime soon. And enjoy Portugal.
Yeah, we'll do. Thanks. Love to the UK.